Welcome, everyone, to Mindset Mentoring for Athletes, Families, and Entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Coach Chuck. Today, we explore the power of mindset with Sandra Bonney, a veteran business coach and speaker. Sandra brings over 3 decades of expertise fostering growth and resilience through emotional agility. In this discussion, we uncover how emotions influence our actions and decisions, the importance of adaptability in overcoming life's challenges. Sandra will share her personal journey and professional strategies that have helped countless individuals enhance their well-being and achieve their goals. Whether you're facing personal hardships or professional setbacks, this episode will equip you with the tools to turn adversity into opportunity. So stay tuned for that.
According to the CDC in 2023, over 10 million teenagers reported experiencing persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness. 10 million. And it's not just teenagers. Over 51 million adults struggle with mental health challenges every single year. Parents, this isn't just statistics. It's our children. It's us. And it's a wake-up call. But here's the thing. Knowledge and awareness is a first step to change. Yet the most important knowledge, the kind that can truly transform lives, is rarely taught. It's not about memorizing facts or getting perfect grades. It's about learning how to train your mindset. At the Unstoppable Mindset Masterclass, we'll teach you and your family how to take control, how to overcome limiting beliefs, tackle financial stress, and rise above the challenges that hold you back. You will gain tools to build unshakable confidence, foster resilience and grit to handle life's toughest moments, and turn habits into rituals that drive lasting change. Imagine the relief of watching your teenager face life with hope instead of hopelessness. Imagine equipping them and yourself with the mindset to not just survive, but thrive. Visit unstoppablemindsetmasterclass.com and register to take the first step towards your transformation.
Welcome back. Today, we have the immense privilege of welcoming a truly remarkable guest to our show. With over 35 years of experience in growing successful businesses and transforming lives, Sandra Bonney is a renowned business life coach, motivational speaker, and trainer. Her expertise has been the driving force behind the success of a diverse range of enterprises, including hair salons, bakeries, dental practices, and real estate businesses. As the CEO and coach of Sandra Bonney Coaching and Training, LLC, Sandra brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to her clients, helping her achieve the highest potential through the power of mindset, resilience, and emotional agility. Her clear focus on client satisfaction and professionalism has resulted in remarkable growth and profitability for every business she has been associated with. Beyond her impressive professional accomplishments, Sandra's personal journey is a testament to the power of mindset and resilience. She has navigated significant challenges, including the diagnosis of her first child with cerebral palsy and the financial crisis of 2009 and 10, demonstrating unwavering confidence and resilient mindset. Sandy is also a passionate advocate for the mental health, particularly for teenagers and their families. Teenage mental health she's dedicated herself to addressing that critical issue through her coaching programs like 6 Personal Perspectives and Jumping In with Boldness. Sandy empowers the individual to develop emotional agility and adaptability, fostering mental well-being and resilience. Please join me in welcoming the incredible Sandy Bonney to our show as she shares her insights on the importance of mindset, resilience, and emotional well-being for teenagers and their families. Welcome, Sandra. How are you today?
I'm great.
Awesome.
How are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm still hoping for a little warmer spring weather. We were spoiled a little bit last week with a couple days. Today, not so much, but it's coming. It's coming. I usually begin by just asking my guests to kind of give us a little bit about their personal history, just kind of introducing yourself, maybe talking about, early childhood experiences that could have helped shape your mindset and maybe driven you to where you're at today. So just kind of give us a little bit of that, and we'll get into the kind of the heart of our conversation.
No, thanks. And thanks again for having me. Just listening to you with the intro, mindset's key. And you think, Gosh, is that really me? um, yeah, it's incredible journey that I've had, and with each season of the journey, I think you don't recognize when you're in that journey of maybe challenges or different that there's another side to it. And my journey started. I had a great uh, lots of grandparents and love surrounding me. And then around 11 years old, which I think is a really pinnacle part of child's uh, direction, should I say. My parents got divorced, super nasty divorce, and and it was a shock. And that put me into the resilience of how do I just get through the day? And my parents weren't emotionally available, didn't even know much about emotions. And so, I did the best that I could as a helper person and someone who wanted to make sure that my mom was happy and, my little sister, I had an 11-year younger sister, and my brother were taken care of. I became that caretaker. And, it was really interesting because I remember one day, Chuck, literally with my brother and my sister watching them. And we had this huge picture window and watching my friends go by and waving at me. And I'm thinking, I'm supposed to be with them. I'm supposed to be a teenager. So my teenage years had some rebellion because when I did get out and I did get free, I was just having a blast. And then one thing that I truly knew is family was super important to me. And so I knew that when, whether I went to college or didn't go to college, I wanted to be a mom. And I don't know if it was because I wanted to share the love that maybe I didn't receive as quickly as or not maybe quickly, but as much as that I maybe needed. And I just thought children were amazing. And so I got married really young. And as you stated, my first child was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. And I'll tell you, you want to have something be, as a 21-year-old, a shocker. That was a shocker. And what I did know about myself, and I remember thinking this is, it's happening. And this is a child you have to take care of. And you're going to have to experience what's next every day. And I didn't have the support from my now ex-husband as I thought. And that was a difficult journey. I was still figuring out marriage and commitment. And so a lot of mindset was just take care of the now. Just take care of things that need to be taken care of right now. And because I wasn't raised to own emotions, it was just move on. Just don't get caught up in, anything that's going to make you sad, because that's not going to help anyone. And so that's how I continued most of my journey in life. Is I loved hard my children, and I raised them. And my husband now, who we've been married 34 years, it was raise them with what maybe we really wanted to be raised with, and we were committed. And so I was resilient, I was committed, I hit the road hard with opening a business. And because I also wanted to bring to my family and myself something, and I wanted to bring them opportunities for them to see and to feel and to experience. And um, those businesses help me do that. Yet they also can create some challenges within myself mentally because I didn't take care of myself as well as I was taking care of my family. And so it was like a peak and valley journey for me up until about 5 years ago. I'd run really hard, work really hard with the businesses, make sure the kids were all taken care of, and then I'd crash. Run really hard, take care of all the next series, and then crash. And because I didn't have any emotional agility or emotional literacy, sadness to me, I fought, or resentment for me, I fought, or any emotions now that I look back that I had, I just fought. Right? I was raised, you don't have time for that. Right? They make you weak. And the last thing I wanted my children to see, or my husband, was a weak woman. And yet, uh, some of those times in your life create the most wisdom. And you don't really see the wisdom until later years. You don't get to offer it to somebody or even be present with my clients. I get to be present with them sometimes so much because guess what's happening? I'm experiencing their story with them. And by asking more deeper questions from them, it gets to open up things that maybe they have pushed down themselves. And whether they choose to share with me something deep or not, depending on what the coaching conversation's about, I just sit with them and what do we need? What's most important for next? What's most important that you could, if you wanted to experience right now, I could help you with. And so, going back to opening and selling businesses, that became really easy. And I thought everybody did that. Go in, build it up, sell it. Go in, build it up, sell it. That became what I did. And that also had created an opportunity for me to get into coaching because I hired a coach and a consultant to help me sell my last business. And that was just a huge eye opener for me because I was selling my business because my now 12-year-old oldest child out of 4 was becoming a teenager. And it was like, how do I hold the business solid, take care of 9 employees, and go home and take care of my family? I was young 30s. And so I said to my husband, who had a great job and, held the insurance and different things, I just said, are you resigning or am I selling? And, we thought we could do it both. And I just knew my capacity and what was missing at my teenage years. One of us had to be there. So I sold the business and don't regret any of the direction I went because I have 4 solid children now because I was all of the therapy that I experienced and all of the learning that I was experiencing and the coaching that I was getting. I was able to be a guide for them when they struggled. I was able to ask them a lot of questions that would just get them thinking about not so much where they were at, but like what else more about that. And so they always felt heard, never enabled, and they always felt loved. And sometimes it was a hard knock love. And that I found out, as my children got older in their teenage years, that what they were fighting out there in the world, right? Social media wasn't there yet. Instant message had just begun. And I'll never forget this time, Chuck, that my oldest son, Christian, was on the computer, and they had limited time on the computers, time and TV time. And so he's writing, and I just happen to walk in the room and I see POS. And of course, I think what that acronym is. And I said, Christian, what does POS mean? Just being curious, like, are you swearing? He goes, Mom, it means parent over shoulder. And I just thought, oh, this is why I'm home. And, just knowing what the bus was telling them, knowing what my daughters were experiencing, knowing what, had my husband traveled a lot. So I had to think, and ask, like, I had to read books about how to maybe have conversations as a mother to my sons. I mean, some really interesting conversations like, hey, what do you think about if there's a guy or a woman, has this really fancy car and wants to give you a ride in it, and mom and dad aren't there to ask, can I? And because there was a pedophiler going around in our area. And, just like those conversations just were things that I didn't want to scare them in life, yet I wanted them to be in awareness. And so this great highs and lows, peaks and valleys, like there's a great book called Peaks and Valleys, and I read it maybe 10 years ago and I went, oh my gosh, that was my life. What I hope someone hears right now is that the most opportunity for anyone is the valley is the most precious, because rising along the way, the peak, to get to be able to look out, right, and see the mountains and see the sunset and know that you've arrived, and it's just such a energetic feeling, and you might be in awe and wonder, is that you can't stay there. Life doesn't allow you to stay there, and that's okay. So as you go back down to the valley to gain wisdom, to gain newness, to gain learning and growth, because there's another valley. I mean, if you think about mountains, right? They're high, some are not as high, some are higher. And so all the lessons and the time to go within is in the valley. And then what you take that and you start to climb back to, what you're looking to achieve and accomplish. And so that, because you've learned so much and you're ready, it doesn't feel so hard to climb, right? Because you have the skills, you have the knowledge, and you have the confidence. And you may have to stop along the way and go, gosh, this is taking a long time. Maybe I need some different equipment, or maybe I need to take another path to get up there, and that's okay too. And so that's just been my journey. And 5 years ago, I had just a shift in mindset. Is okay, I've done this, I'm this. I've always known how I look to have my life after 50 be, and I'm exactly where that vision was. And I without all the highs and lows, the understanding of communication and mindset, and the last 5 years being immersed in learning emotional literacy and emotional agility and emotional navigation, I would not probably be on this call with you as confident to share with people that don't ever get caught up in what other people think. Don't ever get caught up in what the world says you should do, or someone says, this is what you're really good at. Because unless you have emotional awareness and literacy, you're going to have the same behavior that I had, right? I even had not great opportunities that I self-sabotaged because I didn't have the bandwidth to even appreciate next steps. There's a graph goes from entrepreneur to purposeful. I would get to the middle where you have the most growth and the opportunity to get over, right, and go on to the next growth to purposeful. And because I just didn't know what I didn't know, I would get caught up in things that were bigger than me. I had to know everything and how to do it, had to be in control. And what I wasn't in control of was my emotions, right? When you get frustrated, what happens? Well, is it really frustration? Is it really irritation? Is it just doubt because you're doing something new? I mean, when I spend that time to acknowledge, I I know I'm capable of anything. And if I'm not capable of that, I also know that, guess what? This world wasn't built, and other people who have these really great businesses that I follow and my mentors, is because they also leverage themselves with highly talented people. So I learned 5 years ago too that leverage is huge in order to take the next step. And sometimes it costs money.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
I don't know if
Yeah.
that's just how I think about it as my journey, and I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be with you today, Chuck, because it um, our behavior and our programming starts at a young age. And if parents, man, if you're listening to me right now, is it starts with you. And it starts who you surround your children with. And it is not TikTok. It is not Snapchat. It is not Facebook. It is you, because you're their safety net. But guess what becomes their ideal of life is everything outside around you. And let's face it, parents, if you're like my husband Scott and I, it really sucks to be a parent sometimes. It's
Mhm.
hard work. You have to stop. You have to be present, and you've got phone calls to make, and you've got emails to return, and you've got laundry to do, and you've got PTA meetings to go to, and you've got, guess what? If you don't slow down and you don't become aware with your children at the ages of, I would say, 6 to 9, 10, 11, you're going to really have challenges with your children because they don't have a mental awareness and thought process in this really hard world.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many truths and nuggets in that, all you said there. I want to kind of ask you, though, there's several things I want to kind of delve into a little bit more, but going back to that emotional challenges you had as a girl when your parents are divorced, and you said, they weren't emotionally present, you never really learned all that. And then when you were 21, is that when I think you said your oldest child who had cerebral palsy, you were 21?
Yeah.
But you had that mindset where you said, and I think you kind of phrased it well, all right, this is what's happened.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to just deal with it. We're going to go. Not everybody has that mindset. Not everybody does that. Sadly, I've worked with enough families in education and all where some parents, that's just too overwhelming. They just they don't have that mindset. So my question really is, where do you think that came from? Was it from your own experiences as a girl and having to take, in your own mind, take care of your siblings?
Mm-hmm.
Or I think part of my question really is, was it taught to you, or did you absorb it or pick it up from somebody else, or where did it come from? Do you think?
Mm-hmm. It's a great question. Um, well, as you were sharing that, I was like, Um, so my dad had polio and almost died, and I knew a little bit of that story, um, and and so to see where my dad was in his life, as as challenging he could be sometimes, and I didn't understand this until well into therapy years, or whatever I went, got to experience, um, is that resilience he had. And he would he just always showed up hard. And he could do anything. And he taught me, um, I had three stepbrothers and my other brother. And so I was surrounded a lot of boys, and they just never seemed to be emotional. And so with my dad not, there was a famous saying, suck it up, buttercup. And, don't cry, stop crying. There's nothing to cry about in this world. And so I think that just became like, whether it was to me, it was strength if I wasn't crying, because there wasn't time to cry. And, um, and it didn't, like, I never saw my dad cry, um, and, and yet, because was able, because I loved so much, like I loved my mom, and I knew she was hurting, and I loved my little baby sister, and my brother, is how do I keep the same space of safeness for them? And so, my grandmother was a very safe place for me. My grandma Helena and my grandma Flora, they were very close to me. So I brought their care and candor, I think, into what is it going to take care of things right now. And I didn't know any different, right? I just thought, you have family, you pitch in. And I became that mom. And nobody, I just, I, I, I had challenges with being picked on from when I was a little girl, and, you know, never could really, if I shared it with my parents, they were like, oh, you'll be fine. Sticks and stones, you break your bones, but words will never harm you. I'm like, you know what? Had I known they do, yeah, it created, I still work on this today, Chuck, is it created a hardened heart. I love hard, but it also created, um, a heart that said, you've got something you have to deal with, and just deal with it. And my dad showed that. Um, so I had a dad that didn't show anything, and I had a mom that was totally crying all the time or angry. So, um, like something you said is, did I see something? Chuck, I shared a driveway with, our neighbors, and our home was on one side of the driveway in the home. And as I was a teenager, feeding my baby sister baby food and making sure my brother, whether he had eggs, or we were just sitting there, we had a big picture window, and I could see that family eating. I also knew Gail very well. I played with the girls. Like, they had this family I awed about. And so I could see them all sitting at the table. So I wanted to replicate that to my brother and sister. Like, I'm here. I'm safe for you. Don't worry. Things are going to be just fine. And so I think I took that very seriously. And between what my grandma had taught me, my grandfathers, so I took it all in and said, how do you handle stuff? You just handle it. And I didn't always make the right decisions, yet you have to take the step and just do something. And I just did it.
Yeah, the last thing you just said is interesting, because I was just having a conversation about one of the rituals. I talk a lot in the work I do about the power of rituals and the importance
Mm,
of them.
mm,
And one of them I really advocate for because I'm afraid it's lost is what you just said you observed with the neighbors, which is the family meal, the family dinner time. And uh, it is admittedly, right? I had four kids myself. As they got into high school, it became a real challenge to try to have a family meal. I mean, everybody's going different directions. But my
yeah.
wife and I insisted at least, like, and I was coaching, I was doing, out there all the time. And so if we were coming home late, myself and my son or my daughter we would sit together, or my
Mm,
wife would. We would always try to at least have a couple of us sit down as they got older. But when they were young, we're going to do this. We're going to sit down. And the
mhm,
conversation I was having was about this level of philosophy that is actually happening at the kitchen table, where you're having conversations about what happened at school. And then in those conversations, what's right and what's wrong? What did you do? What did you think? These are powerful, powerful conversations that uh, they're getting lost. I mean, by so many of the students I had in middle
mm,
school, those were that was already gone if they ever even had it. And
mhm.
it broke my heart, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
like what they were missing. So when you said you kind of saw that and you wanted that, and then you said that you made a decision to sell your business and all because it was important to you to bring that to your kids, which I think's a wonderful thing, and it's not always easy to do, particularly this day and
Oh,
age.
and
But
even then, it wasn't easy, Chuck. I
yeah,
mean, my kids. You ask them today, and uh, just like you, right? Every kid's in something, sports, music, right? And then it gets to a place. I mean, my husband coached, I coached. I think we lived on hot dogs for one season, and I just told the kids that that's okay because healthy eating was super important for us. But Sundays, they could have as many friends over as they wanted. They couldn't go anywhere because what it did is it gave Scott and I an opportunity to just do something,
hmm
and we also had Sunday dinner, and then we also prepped for food, and and like you said at the dinner table, um, as you can imagine too, right? It can get loud and can get snarky and can get yeah, as I'm sure your wife sat at the two ends, maybe like Scott and I, and we would just look at each other, and and we did allow the food fights. Like one day I remember like my son just kind of had the fork up, and I said, "Go ahead, Brian. You're gonna have to deal with the consequences." And he looked at me and he flipped them across to my daughter Elizabeth, and she was a really like you don't mess with her, and she literally picked up without even looking and just threw the potatoes, and then Alicia, our littlest one, is just like okay, throwing a little bit. And then Christian he's kind of like observing. He's like, oh man, you guys are going to be in super big trouble. And Scott and I, so finally we stopped it. And I said, Brian, what do you think the consequence for that was? What was that like to be able to throw food at your sister? So good. I said, great. I said, what do you think the consequences? And Liz goes, you're going to have to clean up the mess. And so I said, yeah, and guess who else is going to have to clean up the mess? And Elizabeth was like, I'm not. I didn't start it. And I said, no, but you entertained with him. So you're part of that problem. And then Alicia was like maybe 4 or 5 went, do I have to clean up, Mom? I said, yeah. And so the dinner table, still to this day, we get together twice a month easily to have that family time. And I think and I don't know about you, Chuck, but do your kids turn into like little children again when they come home to your house?
yeah.
Like we literally had to teach them a few years ago. Scott goes, hey, Do you think maybe we could teach the kids that we don't mind cooking, but they could clean up? And I was like, yeah. And so we had conversations like, okay, so you could do the dishes and you could pick up, like we're not here to be, you're not little kids anymore. And so that really was, they were like, oh. And so now they all work really well, when they come over, and, we still have to work on my son Brian, who loves to just skirt out of it a little bit, but we have to bring him back in, or his siblings will. But we have had, you said something, and I hadn't even really thought about it till you said it, and it's almost going to makes my heart, is we had phenomenal rituals, and still do to this day, that our kids could count on. Like Christmas Eve, we would go see these lights in Binghamton, New York, this whole, get them in the car, and we'd go get Taco Bell. And so as they all got older, we would go find a place either right before Christmas, or if we could on Christmas Eve, nobody was planned, we would have, so we still have some sort of Mexican feast. And then on as the kids got older, we got away from that. We started, we would do some kind of Mexican somewheres before Christmas, but on Christmas Eve, we do fondue. And then it's so fun. It's become harder now because our kids are married and they have other places to go. Yeah, you say fondue, and I'm thinking they go right back to, because it was a long dinner. I mean, fondue takes forever. And so I guess I just didn't realize how important those rituals have been to my kids, and how meaningful that's kept them. Knowing that who they really are. And something that I didn't maybe share this with you. We also spent summers on an island. We have a cottage off the coast, off the grid. It's called Buston's Island. And we didn't have any electric. We didn't have, everything was, you brought a battery, or we had a wind-up radio. We had a pitcher pump, so water didn't come out of the faucet at the time. And so there was a lot of, our kids were outside all day. And at night, we had gas lights. And so they would read until all the bugs would come and fall on their books. And I just empower parents. Take your kids once a year away from technology. That means yourself. And I know how hard it's going to be, right? Because we now have solar on the island. We now, some things, and, the TV's there now, and we have internet. It's like, no. This is a place we don't do this. Is take your children away and get to know them.
Yeah.
I know, and Coach, teenagers and preteens now, and they are just viewing the outside world in a way that is not reality.
Yeah, I echo that so loudly, as loud as I can. It's an enormously important thing. There's several books that have been out lately that I highly recommend parents to read. One of them is Glow Kids. It's about screen addiction. Another, The Anxiety Generation, which that was co-authored. That was Jonathan Haidt, and he co-authored one called the Coddling the American Mind. That came out first, and then he wrote on his own The Anxiety Generation. And then the most recent one I just finished reading a couple months ago was The Crisis of Comfort. And all of them echo so many of these themes. And, I think back, rituals, when we'd go to camp for a week every summer, we would play music. My wife and I both like music, especially my wife. Yeah. She was really loved music. And we'd start out with Bye Bye American Pie, right? That was on. And
I love it.
But to this day, those songs, my kids, we're going to camp, man. We're going to camp. And it was just such a big thing. And even going camping out. They're all young adults now, and we've got one we're trying to get planned for end of June as a family going together. It's and they will even tell you, just my oldest was 4 years ahead of my youngest. We had four kids in high school at the same time. Do have twins thrown in there, so that kind of helps punch those that numbers up a little bit. But we were very strict about phones when they first started coming out. But as inevitable with the youngest, he got them earlier than the oldest did
Oh
because
yeah.
it was so hard to kind of say no to him when the others are getting them. But that his friends and there's a very unique situation where the older brother and the younger brother, there are four families, all older brothers and younger brothers the same age, grew up together, elementary school. They've been friends ever since elementary school. So these guys are over at the house all the time. And when you saw the older brothers and the younger brothers were much more on their phones. Boom, buried in their
Mm.
phones. And just 4 years difference. But in those 4 years, those habits began to come into play. And I've had conversations with my youngest son. He's all, no, you're right, Dad. I'm trying to absolutely. There have been some times where I look around, we're all hanging out watching a ball game, and I'm watching the game. I look, and my friends, they're on their phones. They're just choop, choop, choop on the phones. And he said they're beginning to recognize it and realize it. And that's my lesson to him was like, that's the first step right there.
Yep.
First step is that awareness of what it's doing to you. And we could probably talk quite a bit about you had brought it up, I think, at one point too, about the social media impact. And you mentioned with your daughter, I think, right? And wow, I've got a number of videos out on my YouTube channel talking about that issue. It's amazing.
It is.
It
It is. Yeah,
now,
our kids know you don't sit at the dinner, and this has been since, right? Same thing. Oldest gets a phone, is and even when their friends come here, and I tell the kids' friends, make sure you tell them the standard of coming to our house to eat dinner. That the phone goes on the island, it doesn't go in between their legs.
yeah, yeah,
So we'll have like sometimes 14 phones on the island, and you can see them all just kind of, especially people who are coming for the first time, they're kind of like, twitching, and and we just laugh, but we just introduced that because again, only time that we got their undivided attention, and I wanted to get to know these children too, like who's at my table, because maybe you won't be coming back, and maybe my kid won't be playing with you, so. So yeah, that was another ritual, and they get put on the table, and
yeah,
and we all say grace. Well, I say grace every
yeah,
once in a while.
yeah,
Somebody will. So it's a thing. Like my kids will literally. It's so funny. They won't eat. Right. Everybody, everything's served on the island, and then everybody sits down, and we'll have like 15 or 20 people at the table, and my kids are, waiting to eat because they know I'm going to pray. And all of a sudden, you see their friends like, why aren't you eating? And they're like, well, my mom has to pray. so,
yeah,
so, we set some precedents with our children's friends. And I said, they'll either come back or they won't. This is just how I believe, right? It's just my truth, my reality. How you're going to behave or how I feel there's a connection in
yeah,
our home. And if you would like to come, this is how we all communicate, um, and it's such a, like you said, Chuck, it's a hard awareness when you have parents that are just in that generation now already. Like they're on their phones all the time. They have their
yeah,
iPads. They have
yeah,
4 or 5 different pings going on, and
yeah.
isn't there some statistics
This,
out there now about brain rot, right? And so, that's it's if parents could really think, like, I just now have a 12-year-old granddaughter. And I wonder, right, that's not my necessarily generation that's going to be taking care of me, but it's going to be taking care of my kids. So
Yeah.
what will my children or my daughter, right, share with her without yet? Let's talk about resilience. Let's talk about adaptability. Let's talk about, emotional agility. Like your children go, So I have told parents, you have to let them go and make mistakes. I used to tell my kid, I still tell them, make good decisions because there's going to be a consequence. You decide. And also is, you know what? No one, I know you have had a pretty, Dad and I have created a pretty nice lifestyle for you, right? We wanted a little better than maybe we had it. Yet don't ever think you're not too good to clean a toilet. Or don't ever think you're better than anyone else, right? Or you don't have to work hard for something. Like, you'll love this, Chuck. Our son was 5 years old, Christian. He said, I'd like a TV in my room. And so my son's 37 now. So in our infinite wisdom, my husband and I said, when you save enough money for a television, right, we will pay half of it. Ooh, be careful, parents, because big TVs were expensive then. Well, guess what? The TVs go down, and all of a sudden, Christian was like 10. He's like, I got enough money for a television. We had to have a whole nother, let's call it negotiation, right? And why that wasn't going to be happening. But we taught our kids, right? You've got to be resilient in this world. And what does that look like for you? You're going to have to be accountable when you make mistakes. And then also I would say to the children, talk to me about, and I would never say what you're feeling. Talk to me about what's going on inside. And they're like, well, I hate homework, or, and I'd say, well, what is it about homework? And this is before I became a coach. It was just, I wanted to dig deeper. Like, who is this child, and what am I don't know? Because he goes off for 8 hours a day, and I'm busy. And so, when I could sense something, and of course now I would have asked, well, what emotion might that you be experiencing? I would say, well, it sounds like you might need some time to really sit in what's going on right now. So you're allowed to go to the basement. You just can't stay there. So take some time, sort it out. You've got Dad and I here. You've got your siblings, maybe write it on paper, maybe make a drawing, depending on what kid I was talking to. I said, yeah, if you don't come up, I will come get you and take you out of that, and we'll talk some more. Because if you stay there, right, you're going to be a pity party. And pity is never going to get you anywhere. And pity isn't going to help you strategize. And pity isn't going to help your friends. Pity isn't going to help you. And then I talk about, and I think my kids understand this completely because of Christian and how many surgeries he had to have, and the times away that we'd have to be, and things when he would come home. Like, our kids, they know how to adapt really well. They don't like it. I have a couple kids who hate change, right? Yeah, oh, well, this is kind of going back. This is what we're doing. My husband worked for UPS. We moved 4 times. We'd be a place 5 years, pack up, move again, new school. And that was another thing, right, is we almost moved to a town that, Brunswick is a town that had a lot of kids moving in and out, so you didn't really get any connections. But they also didn't have a great music program, so we kept them in a school called Westbrook because of the music, and our kids were heavily involved. Yeah, so we taught our kids resilience. We taught them, and now I'm teaching them emotions and ask about an emotion, right? Because statistically, most people only know, and it's more women than men, is 15 to 20, they container, right? Many emotions into one. Like anger is just anger, or doubt is just doubt, or anxiety is just anxiety. Men statistically only really know about 5 emotions.
Yeah.
So, it's really important to help our children and help even adults now. Like if I see one of my friends or somebody that, I'm in leadership with, and I ask them, I said, what are you experiencing right now? What do you think? And they'll say, I'm overwhelmed. I'm like, well, what do you think overwhelmed means? Like, what's overwhelming you? What does that experience look like? What is it? And then I might say, what does that feel like? Because you're going to feel an emotion before you name it, right? You're going to somatically feel it. And so asking somebody how they feel is not always, it's, what are you experiencing right now? Like, how's that overwhelm impacting, you inside? What else might that be? And maybe comes up, well, I'm really frustrated. Or, they might have a couple other words. And so when you go back to navigating today's world, is if you aren't aware of that, there's more than 1 or 2 or 15 emotions that you experience in a day, you're probably having the same patterns that you're stuck in. And I was one of them, right? Because to me, emotions made you weak. Yeah. So why would I even want to feel any? Like when I would get, whether it's depressed or I'd be anxious or I'd be down, oh my gosh, I fought it so hard because I didn't understand. What I was really experiencing was maybe resentment for something, or I was unsatisfied, or I was sad, right? Lost something I really cared about. Yet I didn't I didn't talk to them. I know that seems, I talk to God and I talk to my emotions. So you have to, today's shift with everything that's exposed at us, if you don't have an emotional agility and literacy, right? Most people have an emotional intelligence, right? Right from wrong. Yet sometimes making decisions, and I see it all the time in all my clients, is they're making decisions because of only one way of thinking with their emotions. And when I know, there's 250 plus emotions. You may not be experiencing what you really think you're experiencing, but because of habit, that's what you're experiencing. So, I have a deck of cards called Molly cards, and they're from a coach that I work with. And I will say to my clients, get your Mori cards out right now. And they're like, oh, I forgot. I should be really like getting these out. And we go through 1 or 2 or 3, and then all of a sudden I'm like, well, which one today could, it's either going to help move you or it's something that we really need to discuss about. And they narrowed it down, and you can instantly feel the shift. There's not negative and bad. There's not bad and good emotions. There's only emotions that move us or emotions that don't. That's it.
That's interesting. Emotions are so powerful on many levels, from a health standpoint, from a motivation standpoint, from a drive standpoint, from all kinds of things. And I also grew up with, like you said, your dad you never saw him cry. I never saw my dad cry in the 93 years that, well, I obviously didn't know him when he was younger, but in all those years I knew my dad, never saw him cry. His mom was a very, like, she wasn't a huggy grandmother. She wasn't that. My dad lost his brother. His brother was 9 years older than my dad. His brother died at 18. I never knew his dad. So my dad experienced death a lot. And I always wondered how much that influenced him. He was also an engineer and an architect. So almost by training, there was some of that, kind of planning stuff. But on my mom's side of the family, very emotional, very, huggy kind of. So I'm glad I got that. But definitely, the times too, right? The times era that my dad grew up in and all, you didn't show those emotions. And I talk a lot about emotions because they're really, it's one of those things I say we have to learn to take responsibility for. We're in control of them. And it's important to recognize that we need to experience the emotion. Yeah. We don't necessarily have to hold on to it. We need to pull out what we're supposed to learn from it. But we need to kind of be able to let it go, particularly, and this is where I differ slightly in what you said about the emotions, in that what we typically would call negative emotions, anger, fear, hurt, guilt, shame, emotions like that, you're going to experience those and you need to learn from them. But there's all kinds of research when you hold on to them and you wallow in them. And that's the word I use. You want to get out of it. You don't want to get sucked down into it because they can really negatively impact your health and everything else. And when my wife passed away, 2022, after she got diagnosed with cancer in June, she passed away in July. And, it obviously rocked the world. My kids were young adults at the time. And, I've told other people this. Yeah, of course, all of us experience the sadness and the hurt. I still do from time to time. It still comes up. We just had a family dinner up here on her birthday, April 13th, right? It was a Sunday and had everybody up and, we had a dinner. We kind of celebrated that. There's still that, but none of us, the kids or I, allow ourselves to wallow in it, right? We aren't going to let it keep us trapped in that. And I've seen that happen to other people where they just can't escape that sadness and all, and that it can become debilitating. I actually, shortly after my wife passed away, that December after she passed away, a former student of mine, who we kept in touch with, her story is, let's talk about resilience. I don't have time to share it, but she lost her brother to a drug overdose and her grandmother in 2 week span just prior to Christmas time. And there's a long history of depression and drug and alcohol abuse and stuff in her family that she had avoided her whole life. But she was going into a dark place. And the woman I worked with for years, who worked with her when she was in middle school, we kept in touch, and she knew that my wife had died. So, we were having some of those grief conversations. But she did say that one of the things that helped her get out of that was that foundation we'd laid with her back when she was in middle school. So that's kind of why I'm so big on trying to help teach young people some of these coping strategies, these resilience skills, because they are skills that they can learn. Some shifting in your thinking, beliefs, because when life knocks you down, because it's going to, right? You don't know how, but it's going to get you at some point. It's going to knock you down. It's how you respond to it. And, it's sadly, I don't think most people are taught it. We pick it up somehow. Those of us who develop it, like you said, maybe your grandmother helped show you, you saw it in bits and pieces and you got that. So you have something to grab hold of. which is all well and good, but I think more people need to be directly taught and trained in it. And that's kind of what my mission is. But uh, I just looked at the clock. I'm like, oh my goodness, I could. There's a whole bunch of things I wanted to keep delving into, but we are. I might have to have you back for a second appearance at some point, so we can talk about some of these other issues. Is there any last kind of comment or anything you want to share with the audience before we kind of wrap things up?
Well, I am going to shamelessly put a little plug in. I am writing a book. It's taken me 3 years getting to the final, and you had mentioned something about camping. And the most impactful times in my life where the world just stopped and the love just was surrounding and the wisdom that came about, and just was around the campfires. And there'd be 25, my grandmother's from 13. And so my book, I go in and out of what the title will be, but it's started with The Ring of Wisdom.
Mm.
And I think if I leave anything for someone to think about is take some time if you're a parent, or even if you're not a parent, and you're looking at where your life is now, just ask yourself, am I content? Because contentment isn't about being lazy. Contentment is so powerful because you feel, not believe, you feel fully, I'm enough. I have enough. And when you're that full, you can then offer to have these wonderful conversations with, whether it's your children, whether it's another person you work with, a colleague, and then ask, dig in around dignity. Do I have self-worth? Do I really have self-worth, or do I have imposter syndrome? And that's a whole nother thing. So just, your children need you. And it's not going to be easy to take time when you're used to this habit of doing what you guys do and flow through and whatever. Yet, I promise you, the hard pays off. Just like the hard work. When you do it consistently, you have a successful business that's running like a well-run machine. And you want that for your children. So thank you so much, Chuck, for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And again, your book's going to be coming out when? Do you have an actual date yet, or?
I don't.
Okay.
I am looking for it to come out right before Christmas, so it could be some Christmas gifts for people.
Very cool.
So that's our plan. I work with a writing coach, and she has she's a publisher, and so the next step is print and edit, and then illustrate. So 16 chapters later,
Yeah.
and getting to the end, Chuck. Well, you want to change your life? Start writing a book, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great accomplishment. So I think I said when you and I talked before the show, kudos to you. It's a it's a great journey, and you learn a lot in the process about yourself and about just it's really cool. So kudos to you, and also Sandra Bonney. If somebody wants to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, sandybonney.com, and it's Bonney. They can go to my website. They can go to my Facebook page. Pretty much they can text me, 207-595-1586. I am an open book. You pretty much can find me anyway if you wanted to connect and have a great conversation about whatever.
Awesome. And it's Sandy Bonney, not Sandra Bonney.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
I think I I think I might have said in the intro Sandra Bonney, and so
I kind of
we'll
like
make
it.
sure.
I was like, "Whoa, Sandra," because it used to be you call me Sandra.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know about you, but holy cow, I was in trouble.
Yeah.
And now I think of it as a really beautiful name.
Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure, and yeah, again, we may have to do this again because there's so much more that we could have got into, but
Content.
yeah. Anyways, thank you for joining me, and
Thank you for inviting me, Chuck.
um,
Really.
with to all of you out there, this is a lot of. I hope you pulled out some of the nuggets that I was pulling out, and you probably have more questions as well. As always, as I've been doing through at the end of these shows, is I encourage any of you. This is such an important issue. When statistics are telling us that 42, this was 2023, which is the most recent data I have, but 42% of teenagers were reporting persistent feelings of sadness and hopelessness. Man, that's a problem. That is a problem. So, for all of you parents out there, and again, I know it can be overwhelming. You've got your own concerns, your own life, and you don't always know how to handle it. I make available now, people who are listening to this, a strategy session that something that I've always charged for an hour, $350, but I'll waive that. All you got to do is go to coachchuck360.com, coachchuck360.com. You can go to the contact me section. Um, you can text me, you can email me, what have you. You can go to my calendar. Um, if you want to book a discovery call to learn more, you go to my calendar. If you want to get this free strategy session, you need to text me your first name, last name, best email, so I can then give you a unique link, a link where you won't have to pay for it. But in that strategy session, I'm going to ask all kinds of questions in that time I have. I'm going to give a little analysis so I can try to find out where you are at, and if this is for your team as well, I would want them on that call so I can begin to find out where they're at with things like their self-confidence, self-esteem, their mindset, and ability to handle stress. Right? All these questions and all will give me a lot of information where I can then give you some suggestions, a strategy for moving forward. Whether that involves working with me or not, you're going to get a strategy to take and do what you want with. So I offer that out there. It's such an important thing. And thank you for joining us. And until the next time, go out and live life to the fullest.